All right, let's just jump right in. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a look at a career strategy that is an absolute lifesaver if you're a very specific type of person, someone we call a scanner. Now, be honest with me for a second. Have you ever looked around your house and literally seen a graveyard of abandoned hobbies? Like half-finished projects, maybe a guitar gathering dust, or that coding language you obsessed over for exactly 6 days before totally dropping it. A lot of people might tell you that you have a commitment problem, but what if sticking with things isn't the issue at all? What if your actual problem is that there are just too many things you genuinely want to stick with? You look out and see a dozen different paths, and every single one feels like a legitimate piece of who you are. You aren't afraid of hard work, right? You're just totally paralyzed by the choice. There's this quote, "I could do anything if I only knew what it was." Oh man, that hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? That is the classic scanner's dilemma in a nutshell. You've got all this incredible drive, but the rest of the world looks at your scattered interests and immediately slaps a judgmental label on you. They call you a dilettante. Or worse, they hit you with that super tired cliche, a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And frankly, the anxiety that comes from hearing that your whole life is intense. It tricks you into thinking your absolute greatest strength, your boundless curiosity, is somehow a massive career liability. So, I have a serious question for you. Are you paralyzed by choice? If you're nodding yes right now, I need you to take a deep breath. Because today, we are going to completely dismantle that anxiety. We're going to reframe that curiosity. It is absolutely not a flaw. It's a deeply misunderstood strength. In this explainer, we're literally mapping out the geometry of a successful career for those of us who were simply never meant to do just one thing. We're going to give you the exact structural blueprint to turn all those wide-ranging interests into a massive unfair advantage. To actually understand why standard career advice feels like such a trap, we have to talk about the environments we work in. For the last 100 years, society basically worshipped the specialist. And that's because the world used to be what's called a kind environment. Think of a professional golfer. The rules are totally predictable, you get immediate feedback on your swing, and success just comes from doing the exact same thing over and over. But today we live in a wicked environment. The rules change overnight, the patterns are basically a mystery, and feedback is wildly delayed. Think about a firefighter instead. Every single blaze is completely unique. If a firefighter relies entirely on rigid, hyper-specialized routines, they could actually get hurt. That old advice to just pick one thing and stick to it forever was custom-built for the golfer's world, but we are living in the firefighter's world. And that brings us to the first career shape we need to look at, the I-shaped person. Picture the letter I. This is your traditional hyper-specialist expert. They have one massive, deep, vertical pillar of knowledge. Now, let me be super clear. We absolutely need specialists. Their depth of knowledge is incredibly valuable to society. So the problem isn't that the specialist path is wrong. The problem is when society treats the I-shape as the singular, absolute standard for literally everyone. When we judge every single professional against that one vertical line, it leaves multi-passionate people feeling like total failures, just because their brains are built for that wicked, unpredictable world instead of a kind one. But here's the catch. When you realize you definitely aren't I-shaped, it is so ridiculously easy to fall into the next trap, the dash-shaped person. This is the professional who is a mile wide and an inch deep. You know a tiny little bit about absolutely everything, but you completely lack a real solid foundation. This is exactly where that dilettante label comes from. And honestly, operating as a dash shape creates a ton of anxiety. Why? Because you constantly feel like the ground beneath you is shaky. You're floating over the surface of a dozen different disciplines, but you aren't actually anchored in any of them. We desperately need a way out of this trap. Well, here is the solution. Meet the M-shaped professional. Sometimes you'll hear this called being a polymath. This is our core focus today. Instead of having just one deep pillar or no pillars at all like the dash, an M-shaped career is meticulously built on multiple deep pillars of knowledge. And those pillars, they're connected by a broad horizontal bar of diverse interests. Imagine it like this. Your first deep leg is data science. That's what pays the bills. Your second deep leg is storytelling, and the horizontal bar connecting them is your absolute obsession with psychology, history, and design. Suddenly, you're not just some easily distracted data scientist. You're that incredibly rare, highly valued person who can take massively complex data and weave it into a human narrative that a CEO actually understands and acts on. That is the magic of the M-shape. So how do polymaths actually connect these totally different pillars to create so much value? Their secret weapon is something called far transfer. See, a traditional specialist relies on near transfer, which basically just means applying a skill to a familiar, similar problem. But a polymath, They use far transfer. That is the unbelievable ability to look at the underlying structure of one completely random field, abstract it, and then apply it to an entirely new, completely different domain. Let me show you what far transfer looks like in the real world. Say someone deeply studies the complex branching structure of a tree's root system. They might look at a struggling tech company and suddenly see a much more organic, efficient way to organize their messy database. Or imagine a musician who completely understands the complex harmony and counterpoint of a symphony. They might look at a piece of software code and see a beautifully elegant way to structure it. This is exactly why your random interests are so incredibly valuable. They're not distractions. They actually form a vast library of metaphors that you'll pull from to create breakthrough insights. You literally gain the ability to see the music, not just the notes. Okay, this all sounds great, but how do we actually build this M-shaped life? Well, it starts with our first massive strategy, serial mastery. This is all about how you sequence your skill pillars. Listen, the absolute biggest mistake you can make is trying to build all your deep pillars at the exact same time. If you try to do that, you're going to fall right back into that shallow, anxiety-inducing dash shape. To build a true M shape, you have to sequence things. You must pick one pillar and fully commit to it for a dedicated season of your life. Serial mastery is amazing because it completely cures that paralysis of choice by putting it all on a timeline. Here's how it works. Month 1, you choose just one pillar. Pick it because it offers immediate stability, or maybe just because it's what you have the most energy for right now. Lower the stakes. You aren't picking this for the rest of your life. You're just choosing for this current season. Then, from month 2 through maybe month 18, you pour all your focus into mastering just the core 80% of that pillar. You don't have to become a world-class expert. You just need enough fluency to solve everyday problems without constantly checking a manual. Finally, month 18 and beyond, you practice strategic quitting. Actually, scratch that. It's not really quitting. When your curiosity is satisfied, you are deliberately graduating. You've built your pillar, and now you are totally free to begin building the next one. Now, obviously, building these pillars sequentially takes serious energy, which brings us to strategy 2, the low-drain day job. If your brain is naturally wired for intense exploration and constant learning, you absolutely need a stable platform to launch from. The strategy here is to intentionally find a day job that gives you financial stability, but, and this is absolutely crucial, does not drain every single drop of your cognitive energy by the time you clock out. A super high passion, high stress job that demands 110% of your mental bandwidth, it sounds great on paper, sure, but it leaves absolutely zero room for the exploration your scanner brain desperately craves. If you think this is just some modern self-help theory, let's look at the ultimate polymath, Albert Einstein. Einstein famously spent years working as a low-level clerk in a patent office. Now, society at the time probably looked at him and thought, wow, this guy is really underachieving. But it was actually a brilliant strategic move. That low-drain job provided the incredibly stable ground that allowed his mind to freedom and the leftover energy to literally wander the universe and develop the theory of relativity. So you might really need to radically reframe how you look at your day job. It is not a cage meant to trap you. It's a strategic asset perfectly designed to protect your absolute most valuable resource, your mental energy. So you're protecting your energy with a low-drain job, you're building your pillars one season at a time, but we still have one huge practical hurdle. Enter strategy 3, the external capture system. Let's just be super honest about how a scanner's brain works. You generate way more ideas than your working memory could ever possibly hold at any given time. Think of your mind like a high-output idea factory, but your actual working memory is just a tiny little workbench. If you don't continuously move the finished ideas off that bench, you literally have no room to build anything new. Trying to keep everything locked up in your head is a guaranteed recipe for total overwhelm. This is exactly why you absolutely must have an external system. Have you ever heard of the Zettelkasten method? It's legendary. The great sociologist Niklas Luhmann used it to effortlessly publish over 70 books in his lifetime. Here is how simple the steps are. First, whenever you get hit with a fleeting obsession, just write down one idea on a small index card. Or, use a modern digital tool like Notion or Obsidian. Second, consciously link that card to another related note in your system. Third, just let those connections grow over decades into a massive web of knowledge. So if you get completely fascinated with medieval architecture for a week, capture the notes, and then just let the obsession go without any guilt. 3 years later, you might be designing a website, stumble onto those notes, and realize the structure of a Gothic cathedral maps perfectly to your web design. That is the moment of magic, but it only happens if you capture the dots right now so you can connect them later. All right, let's pull all these threads together into a really actionable blueprint, the scanner's roadmap. Step 1, pick your first pillar to build focus. Remember, just for a season. Step 2, hit that 80% mastery and then strategically graduate to the next one. Step 3, treat your day job as a stable platform to fiercely protect your cognitive energy. And step 4, build a capture system to hold on to all those endless sparks of curiosity. Just seeing this mapped out should hopefully bring you a profound sense of calm. The self-blame fades and a quiet confidence takes over. By the way, to help you actually execute all this, I highly recommend checking out the Polymath Field Guide PDS that's mentioned in our source material. Oh, and if your actual problem is giving up the second things get hard, you definitely want to check out our previous explainer on building the muscle of tenacity. I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful thought to chew on. You were never meant to master just one thing. You are a bridge between worlds. The absolute most crucial takeaway here is this: stop apologizing for your curiosity. Seriously, stop feeling guilty because you want to learn everything. Your seemingly random interests, once you sequence and structure them into that M shape, are exactly what this crazy, complex, wicked world so desperately needs to solve its biggest problems. So what two incredibly different worlds are you going to bridge next? Think about that, start building your pillars, and I will see you in the next explainer.